Finals out there still watching, y'all want to, go up against White Widow, bring it. I'm down to play in several leagues. So
Yeah,
I,
don't
I
let
think
this
it'll be
championship fool you over here. None of us are good at fantasy football. That is just a prop. I suck at fantasy football. You will definitely beat us if you play. So head to head, channel versus channel, we're down. Come beat us and take our crown. We're ready for it. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 15, White Widow Sports Podcast. If it seems like we've forgotten, it's not that. Busy time of the year, a lot of different stuff going on. We try to show up when we can, but we also don't want to put out a podcast if we have nothing to say. We do want to keep things relevant and interesting for you guys, anybody that's watching. So, that being said, it's been a couple weeks since we last gathered here to have another podcast. A lot of stuff has changed. We've had some drafts going on and different things like that. But just since the last time we've had, stuff worth talking about, guys, what's been going on with you?
pretty much the same old, same old. A lot of work, gearing up for vacation. Like most people in the country. Just kind of chilling.
Yeah, I've just been watching some basketball, more than hockey, really. Even though they're both going on, I just enjoy one more than the other. Had a birthday, enjoyed that. Um, so yeah, here we are.
Yeah, everybody. Chris recently celebrated a birthday. It did not fall on Mother's Day, but since our last podcast, he is another year older. So drop a happy birthday, Chris, down in the comments if you would. I'm sure he would appreciate that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
What do you guys want to get into first? You want to talk about basketball playoffs? Maybe we've had a lot going on. I think we're pretty close. We're 3 of the 4 teams for the conference finals have been decided, and I think tomorrow is the final game deciding that one. I think we're all pulling for the Nuggets in that one. They've made that one interesting. But Chris, I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit.
Well, as far as that one goes, I don't really have a preference. I think the Thunder and the Nuggets both deserve it. Um, both teams, don't have the glory of maybe some of the other teams. And listen to me talk here. I'm a Hawks fan, but the Nuggets have actually won something. But both teams have not won enough to be universally hated. That's what I mean. So I don't mind whoever wins there. But I would like to say that I think over this offseason, I've really just fallen in love with Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves and everything. And you look at everything he can do, and then he'll give you an interview and he'll tell you what he just did. And you look at it, it kind of reminds you, and I'm not the first person to say this, it kind of reminds you of Michael Jordan. And ironically enough, you look at him and you're like, whoa, dude is 23 years old and is going to be an MVP candidate coming up. I mean, he already is, but like he's going to be in that conversation for years to come. And I just find myself, even as an East Coast guy, cheering for the Timberwolves the rest of the way.
Which isn't completely out of the blue. I mean, he did go to UGA. Obviously, we got some noted Bulldog fans on here, so seeing him go to the pros and do as well as he has is got to be something that Georgia fans are celebrating. Would be cool if he was doing it for the Hawks, of course, but
Sure.
We've got our own hero down here. I still believe in Ice Trey. So, but yeah, we've got the Pacers beating the Cavs 4-1. I think that was a surprising result for a lot of people. Cavaliers came into the postseason as the 1 seed. They had a great regular season. And I think we actually talked about it one week on this podcast about how they were such a good regular season team, but how would it translate to postseason success? And maybe we were doubting them, rightfully so at the time, because we saw the result of that. Knicks beating the Celtics was very surprising. Before the Jason Tatum injury going on, certainly not after. Obviously, we wish him well. He's one of the biggest stars in the league, highest paid, I believe, in the NBA on a per year salary. Don't know if I necessarily think that he deserves to have that, credit to his name, but a very good young star. Obviously, the Celtics won it all last year, so they're not exactly crying themselves to sleep with their lack of postseason success. But
18 championships.
Yeah. And then over on the West side, Timberwolves beat the Warriors 4-1. We talked about that. And then Thunder Nuggets are tied 3-3. So they've got a decisive game 7 that's going to happen tomorrow, which is Sunday. We're recording this on Saturday. So we'll be looking forward to that. I'm sure Chris and I will both be watching it. Brian probably won't, but we'll tell
Right.
him what happens after.
Yeah,
And he'll
just really
say, I don't care.
really surprised by the East, to be honest,
I,
and whatever.
I do have a question before we get off NBA.
Yeah.
My son and I were talking about it the other day, so I wanted to get y'all's opinion. Do y'all think that NBA and MLB, for that matter, do they just play too many games? I mean, you're starting to see some of these injuries, and it kind of gets boring after a while. Do they? Is the season just too long?
I believe we can reference episode 3, where the exact question was asked. And I'll just give the same answer. No, because fluke wins happen in basketball and baseball. Some lucky things will happen. And if you have enough games, you'll get a good enough sample size to see what the real, uh, who the better team really is.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
for a non-fan, it's just kind of, you know, all right, I'm tired of hearing about basketball. Let's move on to something else. And I get the same way about baseball as well. It's just like, okay, let's get into the postseason. Let's hurry up and get to October because
Got some time.
it, it just to me it feels like it's longer than any. I guess it's definitely longer than football, which most sports do go on longer than football. But it just kind of, I don't know. I get kind of burned out on it for after a little while, and it's like, this should have been done like maybe around just after March Madness. Maybe you could have killed it and been playing these postseason games and get to a champion. Not unlike football, you see the national championship college game, and then shortly after you have the Super Bowl. So it's kind of like back to back. You get a lot of good football right there at the end, and it's just like after March Madness, it's like okay, I'm ready for this to be done. Just my opinion.
Oh, it's funny you bring that up. I actually just attended a grad party. So, real quick, I do want to shout out a couple of high school graduates. So, Harrison Fountain is my boss's son. And then also Brandon Lawson, who is a loyal subscriber, somebody that's had a lot to do with us from the very beginning here on White Widow Sports. So, congratulations to both of those promising young men. I'm really proud of both of you. And I know good things are in store for the future for both of you. But I was at Brandon's grad party earlier today, and was having a conversation with a couple of other guys there. And one of the topics that came up was with the NIL and everything like that, and now the expanded 12-team playoff format. The thing that he felt like he was missing was winning matters. You can have a 2 or 3 loss team now make the playoffs. And he said, man, when I was growing up, it was even before the BCS where you had the AP voting was what determined your national champion. And he goes, you couldn't lose a game. He goes, if you lost, you were dead in the water. Or
Yep.
maybe you have a year where everybody lost at least one and you just had to be that most impressive team with one loss. Maybe you could do it. Then you had the BCS where you had the top 2 teams got voted in, and there were teams where undefeated or years where undefeated teams were being left out of the BCS because of theirs. And he goes, I do think it's cool that you can have an undefeated team. And it probably helps that he's a Florida State fan and he saw the undefeated Florida State team get left out of the Final Four. Whereas, if it was just last year, they would have gotten in and still lost. But that's neither here nor there. But it was just kind of one of those things where, to relate it back to your question, when it comes to baseball and basketball, it's very rare to see one game actually matters unless it
Yeah.
is the very last game of your season. And it's
Yeah.
if we win, we're in. If we don't, we go home, that sort of thing. It doesn't matter. And with baseball, you can go into a series and you can lose 13 runs to 1. You just got blown out, but it doesn't matter because you're playing this team 3 more times this week
Yeah.
and you could beat them the other 3 times and it was considered a successful road trip. Even though
True.
you got blown out in the first game, if you win 3 games of the 4 in the series, that one blowout loss didn't really do anything to hurt you. So whereas Chris can say you have fluky wins and you need a larger sample size of games to really determine who's good and who's not, I still feel like there's a way to accomplish that without 162 games. It does seem a bit excessive in my mind. So
Yeah, I agree for baseball, just not as a huge fan myself. But since you brought up football, let's keep it here for a minute because what I heard something this week and maybe the week before is they're thinking about going to 16 college football team playoffs. And I thought it was kind of a joke, but then I kept hearing it on more and more and more sites and news outlets. And they're looking at 2026 having 16 teams. I was a big fan of expansion. I wanted 8 teams. I got
Yeah.
12. I wasn't going to complain about that. Now, I think they're getting carried away, if there's any truth to this.
Well, I mean, to me, it's just one of those. I like the format of 12 because you do get to reward those top four teams with that first round bye. Obviously, if you go to a 16 team playoff, you're going to miss out on that bye. It's just going to be a straight up like four quadrant bracket, very much like a Sweet 16. We get to college basketball and all. So there's not going to be the same advantage of being a top four team other than just seeding goes. Obviously, you're going to have one versus 16, two versus 15, so on and so forth. But we saw with this year's college football playoff that didn't necessarily matter as far as what the seeding was and who advanced and so to speak. But yeah, the biggest thing is where's the line that they stop crossing? Did they
Right.
expand to 12? They had more games that mattered. Viewership was up. They saw the revenue from that and said, man, what if we had four more teams? We're
Yeah.
adding a couple more games. Now we can make this much
Mhm.
money instead of this much money. And then when does it stop? Do they then go to 20? Do they then go to 24, 32? Is it just going to continue to expand until it's so watered down that it becomes like the NBA playoffs where you've got teams with losing records, or even high school football playoffs? You'll have somebody
Yeah,
that
right,
makes
right,
the playoffs and they won 4 games in a year just because that's
right,
how their classification rolled out. I
Yeah.
don't like the thought of that. If they're expanding because of money and not for the integrity of crowning the best champion, I'm not a fan of that.
right. I guess it's all speculation at this point, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I don't mind it getting a little bit bigger because I do think it adds relevance to the bowls, the other bowls that, people don't they may watch, they may not watch. I know I try to catch as many as I can, but it does, bring the companies that spend a ton of money sponsoring these bowls, and then, they're kind of, I'm not going to say they're meaningless, but they're not, they don't have that high end profile. So I think it's a good, it needs to expand a little bit more. I think it's okay. I don't know that it needs to go past 16. That
Right.
that would be way too many teams and take entirely too long. Injuries start playing effect. But I do think it makes people, oh, I'm not in a bowl, so I'm just gonna, or I'm in this little bowl, it makes no difference. I'm just not gonna play in it. So it does take that away from it. And you saw that this past year with the games that we did get to watch, people wanted to play, they wanted to win, they wanted to, everybody felt like they had a shot. Even though I didn't agree with some of the teams that were in there, they still, all of them had a shot to begin with. So I like it. I like to see it if it expands a little bit further. I don't mind that, but I'm like Brad. I don't want to see it get so watered down where you've got the top 50 teams all go. That doesn't make any sense. Because
Yeah.
I don't know who the 50th team was this past year, but do they even stand a chance against Ohio State and Alabama, Georgia? You know, some of these big schools with tons of money. No, so why even play the
Yeah.
game?
But I mean, like I said, when we expanded to 12, we got a team like an Arizona State that got to come in, show what they were capable of doing,
Yeah,
almost had an overtime upset of Texas. The legend of Cam Scatterbo just continued to grow because of that stage, and including four more teams where it might open the door for some more of those performances. Because if Arizona State hadn't made a playoff, if it was a 14 playoff and they were excluded, whatever game they went to, would he have participated or would he have opted out to get ready for the combine? We would have been robbed of one of the great performances of last season. So I am always in favor of entertaining football and football that matters. So that's good. But I feel like diluting the playoff field to get more teams and more games just for the sake of money when it doesn't actually do anything for the integrity of crowning a champion is where I think that's just that fine line that they're flirting with going from 12 to 16. But whereas I certainly wouldn't be in favor of expanding past 16. I like 12. I like the format that we got last year. And I would
Mhm.
like to see that at least continue for a 5-year period
Yeah.
before they try to decide it needs to be changed, because you can't just go off of last year's playoffs
Right.
and find any kind of glaring holes that need to be corrected. There wasn't a problem with last year's playoffs that anybody could reasonably say, hey, this wasn't really good. We need to put in a fix to change it to this so we can have a better playoff format, because last year's was fantastic, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, let's give it some time before we get greedy.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know that
just
they need to change that in 2026. I think they need to,
That's too soon.
I'm like
2030 maybe.
2028. Huh?
I said 2030 maybe.
Yeah, I'm
Just
like 2028. Give it some years to build on the 12, and let's see
Mhm.
how, if you continue to see success with it, which I think they will, then
Yeah.
let's go, but not do 2 years and we need to grow it. I'm not in favor of that, but I wouldn't mind it in 2028, 2030, somewhere around in there, seeing it grow a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and I know Chris and I have had this conversation. I've always said the one good thing that I think will come of the NIL potentially is going to be an increase in parity in the college football landscape, because I don't want to see a five-star athlete go and be fifth string on a top program's bench when he could be playing. I want to be able to see at least a four-star athlete decide to go to a Toledo, because if
Mhm.
there's a Toledo versus Richmond game on a Wednesday night, it's the only college football game that night. I want to watch it, but I want to be able to watch players that I think I could eventually see on a Sunday. I want to see
Yeah.
them work out. So it's like, man, if you can increase the field to 16 and now there's a chance for 16 teams to make that playoff, now more and more players are saying, hey, if I go here, I can help them become a playoff team. That's going to get more exposure to me as a brand.
Yeah.
That kind of goes hand in hand with the NIL and stuff that we've already talked about a few times here on this channel. Is if it's going to increase the number of teams that are actually competitive, rather than having 3 or 4 teams that are just so loaded with talent that nobody else even has a chance to compete with them. Obviously, I'm all for that, but anything else, I just see it for the money.
True.
Yep.
True. Um,
Uh,
And we'd love to hear everybody else's comments. Leave
yeah,
them down below. Let us know. Do
please.
y'all have an opinion? Stick with the 12s, go up to 16. If you do go up to 16, what year, do you think it needs to happen? We love all comments, so let us know.
yeah, definitely.
I love
And
most all comments.
then I
Thanks for
know
watching the most
also,
impressive.
I guess probably the biggest piece of news since the last time we recorded a podcast was Derek Carr announcing his retirement. So to kind of let
Yeah.
people know what's going on there, or just to kind of frame the conversation, essentially he was dealing with some shoulder injuries. They looked at options. He met with his doctors and everything like that. And what it came down to was, if you were going to correct this issue, it's going to require surgery. The surgery and rehab that comes from fixing that is going to cost him the 2025 season. There's a chance that he would never come back as good as what he was before, which,
Yep.
if you watch any Saints game last year, it wasn't great to begin with. So he made the decision to just retire anyway, not try to come back to football. I think that's a good decision for him. And now it has left the New Orleans Saints in a wide open quarterback competition. Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler, and second round 40th overall draft pick Tyler Shuck. I know Chris will be paying special attention to that. We
Oh,
had
you will.
our rookie draft in our dynasty league, and Chris only had 2 picks in that, but came away with Tet McMillan in the first round and Tyler Shuck in the third round. So a couple of NFC South stars going there, staying within the Falcons division.
Yeah.
So I know he'll be pulling for Tyler Shuck to win that battle and maybe have some utility at the quarterback position. Chris also has Kirk Cousins, who we are still on Pittsburgh Steelers watch. I know Brian checks it multiple times a day. Is it Kirk Cousins? Is it Aaron Rodgers? When are we going to get a Steelers quarterback? Or are they just going to trot out Mason Rudolph every week and see how that goes? I don't think DK Metcalf would appreciate it. But what are your guys' thoughts on the Carr retirement and what happens, with this remaining last few pegs of the quarterback landscape?
Well, I kind of wonder if they're just going to ride out the season and pick up Manning, just to complete that circle next year. I think that would be fun having both Arch Mannings on your roster. And did they draft? I think they drafted him, didn't they?
Archie.
Archie?
The grandfather.
I mean, he played there. I don't know if he was drafted. Like,
I don't either.
that would be like a real technicality question, but I do have a computer up here.
But I'd like to see Arch Manning go there. The Aaron Rodgers thing? It's a joke at this point. I I still don't understand why, they passed on Shador Sanders. I get it. Nobody kind of wanted him, but, I've seen several clips of his, little mini camp, and I understand that the mini camp is more showing people the field and kind of an introduction into the organization. But everything that I've seen from Sanders has looked pretty good. So
Right.
did they, I don't know, kind of screw themselves by not picking him up and letting him fall to the Browns? Or, maybe they did make the right move. I don't know. But the going back to the Steelers and the Aaron Rodgers thing, I mean, it's so late at this point. I almost think he's kind of just he's going to retire. I think he's just he's kind of just holding the shoestring, so to speak, and won't let them tie their shoe.
Yep.
Chris, did you have an answer on the Archie?
Yeah, Archie was drafted to New Orleans, and as we all know, he spent most of his career there. So yeah, that's confirmed. But to answer the original question, Derek Carr, yeah, if more people would take care of themselves like that, you know, you'd have a better world. And I get it. I love football like more than I probably should. But once you look around and you say, hey, it's not going to be a good life if I hold on to something that doesn't want me to hold on to it. Andrew Luck did the same thing, and I think life has worked out for him. I hadn't heard anything from him lately.
I believe he's running football
the
operations for
Stanford
Stanford
thing.
now. I think he's like the athletic director there or
Yeah, he
something.
can pretty much do what he wants to. Can fire coaches, boosters, bring in millions, things like that. Yeah, I think Rogers though. It's hard to say, really. He's kind of kept quiet for a while now. I think we talked about the last time he really said something or did something was on an episode of this podcast probably 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, where he had a meeting, and that's the last I've heard.
Yeah,
So
it's been a little while. But I also
And
remember when they had the coaches meetings. I mean, Mike Tomlin said that they do not have a timeline or a deadline for Aaron Rodgers signing. So it makes me think that maybe there's a deal in place and they would have taken a quarterback sooner than the 5th or 6th round if they didn't think that they had Aaron Rodgers ready to go, or
yeah,
maybe they do have that backup plan of Kirk Cousins.
mhm,
But I do want to, I know the Arch Manning to New Orleans is an intriguing one, but I
mhm.
do want to throw a little bit of a wrench in your plan, Brian, just to see if maybe we get another conversation out of this. But Chris, can you pull up real quick while you got another tab?
Sure.
Let me know who the offensive coordinator is for the New Orleans Saints.
I feel
Give
like
him
you
just a
already know
second.
this.
Oh, I do. I'm proving a point.
Doug Nussmeier?
Nussmeier, that's an interesting last name. I feel like I've heard
Uh,
it. Did anybody watch a LSU game last year by any
yeah,
chance?
yeah.
Do you know what
Right
their
down the road,
quarterback's
huh?
name is?
Right
It
down
is
the road, huh?
Garrett Nussmeier, the starting quarterback for LSU. You know who's also going to be draft eligible next year? Garrett
Yeah,
Nussmeier from LSU, somebody that most Saints fans are going to be very familiar with.
sure.
So if you've got Kellen Moore and he's coming in and he's bringing in the system and everything like that, he has his pick of quarterbacks and he decided to pass on Shador Sanders. That's very likely because he didn't feel like there was a culture fit or a
yeah,
scheme fit there, and they said, hey, we like what we have here. That was obviously before the Derek Carr retirement goes, so maybe there's a part of that. I don't think there's a lot of regret in that decision to not draft because there was options, there was chances, and they passed on them like a lot of teams did. I
Mhm.
think Cleveland passed on them 5 or 6 times before they finally took them with their last pick of the draft. So they had already taken 2 running backs and an additional quarterback before they took Shador Sanders. So I don't think there's any regret there on the New Orleans side of things not taking Shador Sanders.
No, I don't
Maybe
either.
on the Pittsburgh side of things,
Mhm.
but that will remain to be seen. But instead of just penciling in Arch Manning to the Saints next year, I do think Nussmeier is a name to watch purely because the offensive coordinator will surely be vying for his son to come in. And I think he's going to be in Kellen Moore's ear all season saying, hey, watch this clip of my boy. Don't you think he would be good next year? Just something to watch out for.
There is a
I guess
talent gap there, though.
it really depends
Maybe
on
not.
because
Maybe
it
not.
really depends on how good LSU does this year. If
Yeah.
they
Okay. Yeah.
if they kind of flop like they did last year, I don't know that I'm going to be so. What do I want? This offensive quarterback son, or do I want or offensive coordinator's son, or do I want probably what will be the best quarterback in the draft? Now, with that being said, nobody has seen a lot of Arch Manning play. He's come in into games.
Mhm.
He's come in special you know special times where you needed a yard, you needed 2 yards, whatever, to run the ball. So I, it's going to be interesting to see. I guess really both of them, and that would make the real decision on who Moore takes as his quarterback. Because, like I said, do I? Yeah, it's his kid, but you know, coaching my own kid, as he grew up, it's a lot tougher, and I don't know that it would be the right fit to bring in your own son into that situation. And I worked with my dad. It was super hard to work with your dad as your boss, because you view him as your father versus as your boss, and you can't do that at work. So I don't know that I'm super high on him going to New Orleans. Just
Yeah, like I said,
my
it's a
opinion.
name to watch. The one other caveat that I have is I'm not convinced that Arch Manning will be drafted next year, and I
Right.
think it's because he comes back to school because of what you said. He's had
Mhm.
very limited time on the field. Now, look at Quinn Ewers, the amount of money that he turned down to go and play in the NFL this year. There was a lot of money on the table for him to transfer from Texas, possibly going to UNC and joining Bill Belichick as the Tar
Yeah.
Heels quarterback this year. He passed all that up to go to the NFL, and he got drafted in the 7th round going to the Dolphins. He
Yeah,
took a major pay cut to go and be Tua's possible backup, possible third stringer there in
Mhm.
Miami behind Zach Wilson. So that to say, there's not a guarantee that Arch Manning comes out next year. He doesn't need the money coming from the Manning family. There's a chance that he's going to be making plenty of it as long as he stays in college football, just purely because of the NIL landscape. That it's not like he has to rush himself to the NFL field by any stretch of the imagination. And he might even play a little bit of a Caleb Williams game. He might look and see who has that number one pick and if
sure.
that's an organization that he would even want to go and join. And if it's not, because at this point, we all kind of assume that if Arch Manning declares he is going to be not only the number one quarterback drafted, but probably the number one overall pick, just because of the pedigree and the skill set and all of that, that if he doesn't like that number one landing spot, there's a good chance he could kind of say, no, I'm just going to come back, continue to hone my skills, and I'm going to come out next year and be even better. Not to say that that would work out for him one way or the other, but it is something possible to happen. So,
Sure.
Hey, no Manning has come out early.
right.
Remember the big thing with Peyton? Peyton was like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "I want to play one more year," which is an exact impression right there. That was spot on, guys.
I thought Peyton was on the podcast. If your
Yeah,
forehead was
yeah.
just a little bit bigger, I would have thought it was
I
him.
got you, man. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
What else
Uh,
we got, Chris?
I got a little bit of hockey here. We don't have our conference finals completely set up, but the one that stands out to me is the Panthers and the Maple Leafs. Toronto was leading 2 games to 0. Now we're going to a game 7. Um, I said before that I don't want a Canadian team winning this because it's been like 35 years and I want that to keep going. But I also, at the same time, I thought Toronto was a much better team here, even over the defending champions. But here we go. A lot of times it's just a game of luck with hockey. So, obviously, as we said before, it's a good thing they play up to 7 games. to get the more talented team in. And then Edmonton has already made it in on the West, and we're waiting on Dallas and Winnipeg. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know another big event going on is the PGA Championship. I've seen
Yeah.
a couple different shots. I've seen somebody come very close to a hole in one. It wasn't a golfer that I was familiar with, but drove it down and it looked like it just kind of bounced out or lipped straight around, the cup. And I know that's heartbreaking for him because, as we've talked about before on this podcast, a hole in one is not something that you see very often, even with the talent of the PGA Championship and the quality of golfers there, just the caliber of golfers, I guess you would say, being
Yeah.
there. It's not something that you see every tournament, not something you see every weekend when you put golf on. So I know he's hating that didn't go in, but I'm sure he made an easy putt the next one to follow up. But Brian, kind of give us a landscape of the PGA Championship.
Well, Kim actually did. Kim is tied for fifth right now at 6 under, but he did, I believe it was yesterday, he did have a hole in one. And it was a long hole in one as well. So good for him. They're always fun and exciting to see for me, being a big fan of golf. But, we have Scotty Scheffler, always going to do good in this situation. He's 11 under. He's leading right now by far. You have Norin, and I hope I'm saying his name right. He's 8 under. Poston is 7. So I guess notably bigger names would be John Rahm. A lot of people have heard of him. He plays for the Live Tour. He's at 6 under. Bryson DeChambeau, he was doing very well and then just had 2 terrible back-to-back holes that took him from 7 under to now he's at 5 under. So would hopefully he can bounce back tomorrow. It's just kind of I don't know what it is about Saturday and Sunday. In the Masters he did really well on Saturday, and then Sunday he kind of faltered a bit. So maybe it'll be the reverse this year, and he faltered on Saturday, and he'll do really good tomorrow. So because I'm a huge DeChambeau fan. He is a YouTuber as well. If you haven't checked out his channel, go check him out. He's a lot of fun to watch. His breaking 50 is crazy. So, and I think
I did want to ask you about that, Brian, because I know you are a big fan of his. Is that something that as you watch him, and I know golfers have hot and cold streaks, just like you see, hitters at the plate in baseball and shooters and other sports as well. But is that troubling to you in a way to see him be able to come out and look so good at the beginning of a tournament and then to fall off so drastically where it seems like his golf is just so inconsistent day to day, where he can be leading and then completely fall out of favor in a single day's work? Is that something that's troubling to you as you notice trends of his?
Not at all. And the reason why I say that is, you look at Augusta and you look at Qualhalla where they're playing the championship this weekend. Those are ridiculously hard golf courses. I've played both of them on simulators, and yes, it is simulating, but it's still equally as difficult.
I was about to be so impressed if my brother had played both of those. I was like, really? You've played at Augusta National? Like, I didn't even know that. And then he's like, on simulators. I was like,
the simulators are probably very realistic. So
they are. I mean, they do a good job of designing those courses. I've looked into doing it myself on the computer. It is super hard. They do a lot of GIS, landscaping. So, I mean, it is almost like playing the real course. Obviously it's computer driven. So it's, there's always little factors that you're never going to be able to account for, but it's the closest I'm ever going to play or get to play at Augusta or any of the other, maybe I'll play at a TPC one day. If we've got any super wealthy viewers out there and they want to hook me up, I'm down. Let's go. But yeah, it's not concerning. Going back to your question, it's not concerning at all because of the scope of the course. It's so hard. It is not unheard of. And it can happen to Scheffler tomorrow. 2-3 bad holes right in a row, that kills your score, and then it puts other people right back into contention. So you really have to be on your A game for 4 days at these tournaments. And to say that's hard is just a complete understatement, to what these guys can do. And, I guess one of the things that I love about golf is you don't necessarily have to look like an athlete. You look at the NFL and a lot of the basketball players, they're all similar builds. They're all, super ripped, very lean guys. And you don't necessarily have that with golf. You've got several out there that are, they got the dad bod going on. So, I like that about golf is just about everybody can play it. You just have to be an athlete. Now, I'm not saying everybody can go out and be on the PGA because that is super difficult, but everybody can go to their local course and play. It's not a big deal to go play.
Yeah, definitely. Did we have any thoughts on any other topics?
I had some
Right.
thoughts on something, but I think we've run a bit long, and maybe I'll save it because it's still actually going on, and we can maybe cover it next time.
Sure. Well, there is one other thing that I wanted to put out there just as a reward for anybody that is watching our podcast this long. If you made it to the end, obviously we're very early in the process, and I didn't even tell Brian and Chris that I was going to say this. Kind of just something I've thought about over the last few minutes. But if you were still watching this podcast this late into it, let me know. Send me a message, drop a comment below. This is your first opportunity to grab a spot in the first ever White Widow Sports Fantasy Football League. We are going to be filling that league over the next few months. But if you're watching it right now and you want a spot, reserve one now. Drop a comment, say I want in, and we will reserve it for you. Might be a 12-team league is probably what I'm thinking. Obviously, the three of us will make up 25% of that league, so there's only 9 other spots left to grab. We want to fill that up with people who want to play, people who don't just come in because they play fantasy football and we had to reach out to them and ask them to join the league. We want somebody that watches the podcast, is a fan of the channel. We want to fill this league with you guys that maybe we don't even know yet, have never played with before. If you want a spot in the league, drop a comment, let us know now, and we'll get you in there. This is your first opportunity to do so, and I'm going to be keeping up with that from here until August or so.
Yeah, that sounds fun. And if there's other channels out there still watching, y'all want to, go up against White Widow, bring it. I'm down to play in several leagues. So
yeah, don't let this championship fool you over here. None of us are good at fantasy football. That is just a prop. I suck at fantasy football. You will definitely beat us if you play. So head to head, channel versus channel, we're down. Come beat us and take our crown. We're ready for it.
100%.
But other than that, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. I'll be out of town next week on a beach trip, so I don't know quite the status of next week's podcast, but sometime within the next couple of weeks, we'll be back again to do it all over again. But thank you for watching.